Hey, thanks for tuning in today and joining us for another episode in Homeschool for the Soul. My name is Anthony. I'm one of the pastors at Real Life Church. Today, I'm joined by Chad Franks. He's a Real Life member. He's a friend of mine, and he's going to tell you a little bit about who he is and what he does for a living. This week on Homeschool for the Soul, we're talking about fear. We're talking about facing fear. We're talking about navigating fear, because we know that as next rolls out, whatever next looks like, people will be navigating apprehension, navigating new feelings that either they're ready for or not. And so we wanted to spend a week talking about what to do with that and how other people in their fields train for fear. And so our Army guys like you, Chad, spend some time talking through what you do when scary things happen. But before we get to that, because you gave it away, it's on your shirt, we kind of know what career you're in. Tell us about yourself and tell us in your training and maybe kind of what you do for the Army in your training, like what you guys do when it comes to talking about fear and how you navigate it.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thanks again for having me on, Anthony. And yeah, I appreciate you invited me to come on in uniform, and usually I'm kind of hesitant to wear a uniform on camera. And it worked out in my favor because I'm out of regulation because I haven't shaved since we've been inside. And so it gave me an excuse to not have to wear it. But I appreciate you having me on. So I've been, my wife and I, Lauren, have been members of Real Life for a while now. And we have two beautiful kids that we love and are missing the church right now. So Lauren and McKinley. But we really appreciate all the content that's coming up on there. And I feel great. Thanks to you, I've been volunteering with the audiovisual team and learning a lot. That's been kind of something I've been growing out of my comfort zone and learning a lot in that area. So that's kind of connects to what we're doing here, because I kind of had a fear of that stuff. I'm not always the most technologically savvy person, but you kind of have to embrace that sometimes. And I'll get into that more when we talk about fear and like the inevitability of fear. And I think some ways that the way the military trains us can really transition into when we're all going back into the world in this transition phase that we're eventually going to go into. So much of it is applicable to our lives. And I see a lot of parallels as well between my work and the church as well. So I'm really happy to get into that. I've been in the Army Reserves now I'm about to start my 10th year. I'm really excited about that. So about halfway done. And I've been doing it for a long time. The first half of my career, I did all logistics and planning, which again, we'll be able to talk a little bit more on how that helps us face our fears. And now I do public affairs. So I do kind of similar to what we're doing here. I do a lot of interviews, but normally I'm the one interviewing. So this is different for me. But we just do a lot of social media outreach and really kind of tell the Army story. Let people know there's a lot of amazing things the military does that people don't even think about. People think that it's just the infantry, that they're going out and they're a lethal force. And though that is an aspect of what we do, it is a very small part of what we do. And so, yeah, I've been very fortunate to work with some amazing people. I like to say that I don't see myself as really like that frontline warrior, but I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of amazing frontline warriors that have done some incredible things. I've seen them do things, conquer fears that have really inspired me. And the opportunity to serve with those individuals has been one of the greatest blessings of my life. So I'm gonna keep doing it until they kick me out.
That's good. Tell me a little bit more about that. Like guys that you work with, ladies you work with who face fear, like you guys go through training for that. So walk me through, is that something you go through in basic training? Is that something you kind of relap on and make sure you cover it once in a while? Like what does that training look like?
Yeah, so it starts initially with your basic training, and then that we have to, every year we have a biannual training called an Mrt Course. So you'll hear me say some acronyms here, and I'll do my best to say what they are. But that's a Master Resiliency Training, and this is something that the Army has embraced, especially coming out of the first wave of Iraq and Afghanistan. We had a lot of soldiers coming back with PTSD, and the military tried to do a response to that by being more proactive, like not just when the soldiers come back, how are we going to respond to that? We try to set them up for success before we deploy them. And that's what this whole MRT training is, that Master Resiliency Training. And that's something we have to do biannually. So we're constantly doing physical training, and we're constantly doing, making sure that we're qualified medically, qualified on, our weapons, physically, all these things. But that wasn't enough. There was a mental component that I think that they were really lacking on, and they saw that. Because you can go and run a marathon and that's great, but if you don't have that mental toughness to go along with that physical toughness, you're not going to be able to serve your unit, and you're not going to be able to serve, ultimately your country. So that's something that, yeah, we're constantly having to do self-assessments and then team assessments on where our strengths and weaknesses are, to identify really what you're, because if you're able to identify your strengths and weaknesses, you're really able to gauge what you need to fix. And then usually what you need to fix is what you're afraid of. So a lot of us right now are afraid to go out. Maybe you're afraid to go and do something, but that's a weakness that we have, and then you need to be able to adapt and be flexible. So again, it's something that we're constantly having to address. So.
And I love that idea of resilience, right? That we're trying to build resilience. Like what does that training look like? Like, you said self-assessment stuff, but like people just jumping out from behind corners and going like, and then you like adapt.
That's part of it. Yeah, actually, yeah.
Part of it. Okay, good.
Yeah, a big portion of the resiliency training is, so you have a classroom portion of it. And then you have, you have those assessments. So we have to do like just to check the box, like I'm feeling this level of stress, or I'm feeling, they actually go into your diet, every possible like metric you can think of. And then then you'll get back together with your team and then do a team assessment. And then you have, what we call inoculation training. And that's something that's very common in every aspect of the military. You have to do inoculation. And that's huge when grappling with your fear, because the Army doesn't expect you to just go run out the gate. They really put you in a walk, crawl, run phase. So, and that's what I would really think. So what we have to do in that phase, or in that training, so not only after you leave the classroom environment, then you'll go do like an obstacle course or a team event that really kind of puts those practices to makes the rubber meet the road in that sense. So and go out and how the best way to phrase it, but execute what you learned in the classroom, because it's not enough to just read and hear from a PowerPoint. So you have to kind of apply that. And then they apply it in phases. So that's something I really think is important as we transition to this new phase in our world. Don't just think that I'm going to go out and I'm going to run a million errands. I'm going to go do a bunch of things. Really pace yourself, because it's going to be scary, and you're going to meet other people who are also and interacting with their own fear. Don't go and run right out the gate. You really have to pace yourself and plan ahead. That's a huge portion of every aspect of what we do in the military is planning. You can't just go out and execute a mission without planning ahead, because you're really going to get people hurt. And that really applies to what we're doing now. You have to plan ahead, practice, train. We say train how you would fight. So I would say if you're going to go put your mask on, don't the first time putting your mask on be in the parking lot before you go somewhere. Walk around your house with it a little bit, get familiar with it, and that's really going to help you manage your fear, manage your anxiety, build up your resilience. Is to just practice. That's a huge aspect of it. And then planning ahead. I can't emphasize that enough, because if you just go in without a plan, that's when the fear will really hit you, because fear is inevitable. I think that's the most important thing when they're training us in resiliency. Fear is inevitable, it's natural, and you should embrace it. If some people that I've had the opportunity to speak with that have done incredible things, they've done multiple combat deployments, they'll tell you that that they were afraid. The people that aren't afraid are typically sociopaths, and those are the people who don't, and we have to watch for that as well. But no, fear is really important. It means you want to survive. It means you want to go and make it to your next day. And also too, in the military, you're part of a unit. You're not by yourself. You need to be able to be there for your team around you. So that fear means you want to make sure you're compelling yourself to finish the mission. So that's a good thing. So I think if you have fear, don't run from it. Embrace it. Realize it's a tool to help identify really what you're worried about. That's just that first emotion. There's more to it than that. And if you dig a little deeper and kind of analyze that, the problems your fear seems to be much more manageable. But if you just stop at the fear, I'm scared of it, I'm going to run away from it, then you're not going to get to that problem solving portion of it. The famous FDR quote, the only thing you have to fear is fear itself, right? So once you conquer that, once you conquer the fear of fear, you realize it's a much more manageable process. Once you realize, oh my gosh, something that gets me through every training that I have to do is I'm not the first soldier to do this. I'm not the first guy to kick down this door, right? There's been a lot of other people that have done this before. And so that kind of legacy helps me get through everything else. And then that, again, you have to break down that first barrier of fear and push forward with that.
There were some bets on how early into the conversation you'd use a presidential quote, so it was good.
Oh,
So whoever, I think
I have restrained myself. I could have done a couple more.
Because you're the guy who named your kids after presidents.
Yeah.
I love that idea of crawl, walk, run, right? And that fear isn't failure, right? Fear just means like you care about tomorrow. That's actually a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thinking through how to crawl, how to walk, and then how to run. That's all really helpful. And I think that the Army approach to we're not just one person, we're in a unit, right? We're together in this, really speaks to kind of the experience of church, right? Like we're not in this alone, like we have a group of people, but we may want to first get together with our small group and then a slightly bigger before we all just show up together and not know how we're going to deal with other humans, right? That's good.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the biggest parallel I see throughout any time that I'm doing anything within the military and doing it with the church is nothing in the military is designed for you to do unilaterally. If you're doing something on your own, you're doing it wrong. And that's for many reasons, again, because it's a very, potentially dangerous job. You want to have checks and balances in place, but also too, when you're dealing with that resiliency, like God didn't design us to be individuals as well. We really aren't supposed to go out in the world and manage everything on our own because our own wisdom is flawed, right? So when you have that checks and balance, you're obviously able to make better decisions. But in confronting fear side, these fears are, sometimes can be bigger than the individual themselves. You need people to lean on. And I've really enjoyed my time with my small group. We have some great individuals, and you're out there, and you're able to just express your fear. Because we are part of a team, and that's what's really cool. That's why I like serving and being a part of a church, is because that's the thing that drew me to going into the military in the first place, is being a part of something bigger. And the churches, we're all a part of something bigger, and you're supposed to not only support others, but they're there to support you. So you're not in the fight alone. And so again, I would apply everything that we're doing now into the church. As we're going out there, and you're going to go do things that are scary, and you're going to go step outside of your comfort zone. Please don't do it alone, because you weren't designed to do that. None of us, at least successfully, we're not designed to do it successfully alone. You could try, but if you want to be successful in that mission, then I'd recommend going and doing it with a team.
That's good. So if you could say one more thing, because you could probably say 90. We've hung out before, like you're not for words, but if you could say one more thing, kind of from what you've experienced in training, what you've experienced in being in the Army, that could apply to our next steps as we step into whatever next looks like and we navigate fear. Is there one more thing, if you could narrow it down, that you'd share with us to encourage us or maybe give us something to think about?
Yeah. So one thing I think that's really critical in anything that you do in the military, we do something called an after action review. So an AAR. So after you do anything, the best thing to do is to kind of self-evaluate. And I think, so much of us are going out there in the world. We're spending so much time on social media right now. So a lot of it could be really negative, but you're not learning, you're not adapting, and you're not serving if you're just doing it blindly and you're not self-reflecting. And so that can apply to not just how we're managing fear, but I think anything. And I think the fact that the military puts such a strong emphasis on self-reflection and looking back at what we did and how we can do it better, I think that's something that I think would be essential to not only managing fear, but really just, helping our church advance its mission, helping our small group go and do, just stretch ourselves and go out there and push harder and push our limits a little bit. But you can only do that with self-reflection, because again, we can't be doing this all on our own. So that's mostly.
What do you think an AAR looks like for somebody, like an after action reflection? Like give me a practical example. I'm going to tap into, like, your wife's in the mental health profession. Like you guys, this is built into kind of who you guys are, but like, give me an example. How would somebody do that?
So the first thing that we do, so if you're going to go do anything, we call it 3 ups and 3 downs. So what are 3 positive things that you saw when you were going and taking, executing this mission? And what are 3 negative things that we saw? And you absolutely have to put those out there. So, and I think that's important. So if you go out and, you're going out to, go to Walmart for the first time, you're going out to Target or something to go get all these groceries, or maybe the first time you're going to go out on the beach and go do something public, and it was a stressful, anxiety driving event. And you don't want to, experience that fear again. You want to grow and adapt. I think a good way of doing that is, okay, what were 3 positive things about what we did and that I want to sustain for the next time I go out? And what are 3 negative things that I really don't want to repeat while I'm out there? And that is just and if you're thinking these things through too while you're out there in the world, this will also help manage your fear, because you're really focusing on what are those positives, what are those negatives. You're not focusing on the mental stress that is fear, because it's all in here. That's the other thing too. All your mental thing. It's all in your head, and that's fine. But it's what I like to say too is when the fear is in your head, but also your tools for victory are in your head as well. Neither of those things are tangible, but that means they're both changeable as well.
That's good. All right, Chad. Well, thanks for hanging out with us. Appreciate it, man. Look forward to when we can gather again in person.
I can't wait.
And, thanks to everybody else who's been watching. Hopefully this is helpful for you. If you have questions for Chad, you can always leave them in the comment section. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Thanks, guys.